Millionaire CEO thought she was just a teacher, until she let her guard down. But before we begin, drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from, and at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the show. James Wilson drummed his fingers against the polished mahogany conference table, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The quarterly board meeting had already run half an hour late, and his inbox held 14 unread emails demanding immediate attention. "And finally," said Catherine Morris, the head of public relations, her tone tight with concern, "we need to address the public backlash surrounding the East Boston development project." James straightened in his chair. The planned expansion of Artemis Tech, a massive 10-acre campus that promised thousands of new jobs, and had hit a wall of resistance from local residents worried about gentrification and being pushed out of their homes. The petition against our project has already gathered 15,000 signatures. Catherine continued, handing him a tablet. And yesterday, the Boston Chronicle published yet another scathing article. "Our public image is at its lowest point ever." "That's absurd," James muttered, scrolling through the article. "We're bringing jobs, infrastructure, progress. What more do they want?" Catherine sighed, her voice soft but steady. "They want to know that we care, not just about profits, but about people. The community needs to see the human side of Artemis." "We already donated $2 million to community improvements," James countered. "Money isn't everything," she said, her voice trembling with exhaustion and frustration. "They need to see leaders who actually show up, who care enough to step into their world. Which is why I've signed you up for a mentorship program. You'll be working with students at Garfield High, the very school facing relocation because of our project." James froze. "I'm sorry, what?" he asked, thinking he'd misheard. 4 hours a week, Catherine said calmly. "The board voted unanimously." He glanced around the room. No one met his eyes. It felt like a setup. At 36, James Wilson was the youngest CEO in Artemis Tech history. He'd built the company from scratch and turned it into a billion-dollar powerhouse. He didn't have time for charity optics and PR stunts. "There has to be another way," he murmured, already calculating the hours he'd lose. "The zoning vote is in 2 months," Catherine replied firmly. "We need public support. This isn't optional. Your first session starts tomorrow, 9 a.m. The next morning, James parked his Tesla in the cracked lot outside Garfield High, frowning as the car dipped into a deep pothole. The old brick building, with its peeling windows and faded walls, stood in harsh contrast to Artemis Tech's gleaming glass headquarters downtown. 16 hours of my life," he muttered, grabbing his leather briefcase. The hallways buzzed with teenage chaos. Lockers slammed. Laughter echoed. Sneakers squeaked against the worn linoleum. His sharp suit and Italian shoes made him look like an alien in this world. An exhausted security guard directed him to the main office, where a weary secretary barely glanced up. "You must be the volunteer from Artemis," she said, handing him a visitor badge. "Room 207, Miss Chen is expecting you." James followed the signs, dodging groups of students who seemed to move in slow motion, their laughter ringing in his ears. When he reached room 207, the door was propped open by a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. Inside, a woman stood with her back to him, writing quickly on the chalkboard. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy bun, held together with a pencil. She wore a cardigan with elbow patches, a simple blouse, and comfortable slacks. Completely ordinary, yet somehow captivating. "Excuse me," James said, glancing at his watch. "I'm looking for Miss Chen." The woman turned, and for a moment, time stopped. Behind the thin rectangular glasses were eyes, sharp, intelligent, and holding a mystery he couldn't name. She studied him for a few moments, taking in every detail, the expensive suit, the barely restrained impatience in his posture. "Mr. Wilson, I presume?" she said, setting her marker aside. "I'm Olivia Chen," James extended his hand. "James Wilson, CEO of Artemis Technologies." "Yes, I know who you are," she replied, shaking his hand firmly and briefly. "Your company wants to demolish our school." James blinked, stunned by her bluntness. "Actually, we've proposed building a modern campus just 3 miles from here." 3 miles, she calculated, adjusting her glasses. For families without proper transportation, that might as well be 30. But I'm sure you've already factored that into your generous offer. Before James could respond, the bell rang, and the classroom filled with students. Olivia gestured to an empty table in the corner. "You'll observe from there today," she said, watching the teenagers stream in. "We're discussing appearance versus reality in literature. Something tells me it'll be useful for you." Reluctantly, James squeezed into the tiny chair, knees nearly touching his chest. He pulled out his phone to check his emails, but Olivia's voice stopped him. "Mr. Wilson, phones are strictly forbidden in my class. If I take it, you'll have to get it back from the principal after class, just like every other student." A few students snickered, and James felt his cheeks burn as he tucked his phone away. 4 weeks promised to be long. The discussion, however, proved surprisingly engaging. They debated characters who misjudge others at first glance. Olivia moved energetically around the room, coaxing answers even from the shyest students. Her questions demanded thought, not rote repetition. "Why did Darcy misjudge Elizabeth?" she asked. "Because he's a wealthy snob," offered a girl with bright blue hair. Olivia nodded, turning her attention to a boy at the back. "He only sees what he expects to see. He assumed she wasn't good enough before really knowing her." "Exactly, Miguel," Olivia affirmed. "We often see what we want to see, especially with people from different social circles. We judge by looks, positions, wealth, rather than truly understanding someone." James shifted in his chair, feeling her words directed at him as much as at the class. When the bell rang, the students left reluctantly, lingering to talk to Olivia. Once the room emptied, she turned to him. "Well, Mr. Wilson, how was your first day?" James stretched as he stood. "You're a great teacher. Your students are engaged." "Most of them," she agreed, despite the outdated textbooks and crowded classroom. "The partnership program mentions mentorship," James said, changing the subject. "What exactly do I need to do?" Olivia leaned on her desk, arms crossed. "You'll work with a group of 5 high school students passionate about business and technology. Your job is to help them develop a project that solves a real community problem. At the end of the month, they'll present their results." "I can handle that," James nodded, already drafting a plan in his mind based on his MBA experience. "There's one condition," Olivia added. "No corporate jargon, no Silicon Valley buzzwords. And don't say a single word about Artemis being their dream company. These kids need practical experience, not a sales pitch." "I know how to communicate with people," James said, tense. "Really?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Because from what I saw of your community program, you're much better at speaking at people than with them." James felt his jaw tighten. "Look, Miss Chen, call me Olivia," she cut in sharply. "We'll only be working together for a month." "Olivia," he continued, "I understand your concerns about the development project, but I'm here with good intentions. I value education and want to help your students." "Our students," she corrected, her voice sharp as ice. "If that's truly the case, I'm eager to see the results. Tomorrow, your mentor group meets in the library at 3 p.m. Don't be late. It shows you value their time." With that, she turned to the board, leaving no room for argument. James stood frozen, unused to such bluntness. In his world of corporate hierarchies and polished titles, Olivia Chen was an anomaly, unimpressed by his status, fearless in the face of success, and seemingly immune to his charm. As he navigated back to his car, dodging potholes the size of craters, he reflected on Olivia's lesson. Appearance versus reality. First impressions versus truth. Had he underestimated Garfield High? Perhaps he hadn't seen the full picture. He brushed the thought aside. Just PR games, nothing more. 4 weeks of playing the good guy, and Project Artemis would roll on. The new campus would revitalize the area, and even the sharpest teachers would eventually acknowledge it. His phone buzzed. Catherine calling. "How was your first day of mentoring?" she asked, cutting straight to the point. "Let's just say the welcome wasn't exactly warm," James replied, starting the engine. "The teacher made it clear she's not a fan of our development plans." "That's exactly why you need to earn their trust," Catherine said. "By the way, this Friday at the Fairmont, there's a charity gala for education. The mayor and zoning board members will be there. I reserved a table for Artemis." James exhaled slowly. Another PR opportunity. Exactly. Wear your best tuxedo, bring the checkbook, and show everyone that Artemis Tech cares about education. Driving out of the school parking lot, James couldn't help but wonder, how would Olivia react to such a transparent image play? He knew the sight of wealthy business people waving checks over champagne wouldn't impress her, no matter how many zeros were on those checks. And for some reason, that thought unsettled him far more than it should have. Meanwhile, back in her classroom, Olivia aggressively wiped the board harder than necessary. The encounter with James Wilson had only intensified her skepticism toward Artemis Tech and its expansion plans. He had been exactly as she expected, polished, privileged, and utterly detached from the reality her students faced. The way he surveyed the school with barely hidden disdain, as if lack of resources were a personal insult rather than a symptom of systemic underfunding, made her blood boil, yet he listened during the lesson, genuinely engaged in the discussion. For a fleeting moment, when he acknowledged her teaching skills, she glimpsed something more, perhaps a person capable of change. "Don't be naive, Olivia," she muttered, gathering her papers. 1 month of community service wouldn't transform James Wilson from corporate shark to education champion. And when the month ended, Artemis Tech would continue its relentless expansion, regardless of Garfield High or its community. Her eyes fell on the calendar, Friday circled in red. Her second job, coordinating the charity gala that Boston's elite would attend. The irony wasn't lost on her. She would work behind the scenes at an event where wealthy patrons praised themselves for supporting education, while real teachers like her struggled just to make ends meet. A small secret she could not foresee, that Friday would bring a fateful misstep, a crack in James Wilson's carefully controlled world, capable of toppling the boundaries she had meticulously built. Friday evening had Boston drenched in a relentless drizzle, wet streets shimmering under the glow of streetlights. Olivia hurried through the service entrance of the Fairmont Hotel, shaking droplets off her umbrella. Tonight, she wasn't in her usual school uniform. Instead, she wore a borrowed evening gown of deep midnight blue, her hair cascading freely instead of tucked into the neat bun she always wore. "You're late, Marco," the event director said coolly, glancing at his watch. "Guests start arriving in half an hour." "Sorry," Olivia replied, adjusting her dress. "Parent meetings ran long." He handed her a headset and a tablet. "You're in charge of the silent auction tonight. Keep those rich people bidding. Every cent counts." Olivia nodded, fitting the headset over her ears. Her role was invisible but crucial, orchestrating every move to keep the evening flawless. She'd done this during grad school, charity galas, corporate events, political fundraisers. The pay was good, the schedule flexible, allowing her to pursue her real passion, teaching. She paused at the entrance of the grand ballroom, struck by the transformation. Crystal chandeliers bathed tables in soft light, each adorned with lavish floral arrangements. A string quartet played in the corner while waiters in pristine uniforms arranged glasses of champagne. The evening's theme, Building the Minds of Tomorrow, glowed on elegant banners with smiling student faces. Ironically, none of the photos showed the reality. Overcrowded classrooms and outdated textbooks at Garfield School. Quite the show, isn't it? Came the voice of Sam, the bartender, arranging bottles behind the bar. "All this money?" He gestured at the room. "And most of it probably goes to administrators' whims, not classrooms." Olivia quietly marked items on her tablet. "Better than nothing," she murmured. "Exactly," Sam sighed. "By the way, you look different tonight." "Good different." Olivia touched her loose hair nervously. No glasses, contacts in, subtle makeup. She barely recognized herself. This was a costume of sorts, a persona she sometimes stepped into. "Thanks," she smiled. "Just part of the job." "Well, the job suits you. Want me to save a bottle of good champagne for you? For when these rich folks leave?" "Definitely, but I've got a mountain of grading tomorrow," Olivia laughed. As guests arrived, Olivia dove into her duties, guiding participants to auction tables, answering questions, and monitoring the flow of the evening. She was so focused she didn't notice until James Wilson suddenly appeared in front of her. "Excuse me," his voice calm and precise. "Could you point me to the Artemis Tech table?" Olivia froze, a surge of unexpected thrill coursing through her. Two worlds collided in that instant. James, impeccably dressed in a tuxedo, hair slightly damp from the rain, looked straight at her, but there was no recognition in his eyes. He doesn't recognize me, she thought, lightning striking through her mind. Without her teacher uniform, glasses, or familiar demeanor, she was a complete stranger. And suddenly a spark of mischief took over. Here he was, the man who had spent the week observing her class, barely concealing his corporate superiority, and he didn't even know her. This confirmed everything she suspected. He didn't care about her as a person. Of course. "Mr. Wilson," she said, her voice slightly formal, detached from the classroom version of herself. "Right this way, I'll show you to the table. Your table is right by the stage, on the right, perfect spot." James looked momentarily surprised. "You know who I am?" she asked, letting a slow smile tug at her lips. "Everyone knows the CEO of Artemis Tech," he replied. "Your company has been popping up in the news a lot lately," she said, her tone laced with light irony. "Not always for the reasons I'd like," he admitted bitterly. "Development in East Boston?" Olivia asked, a playful, innocent smile tugging at her lips, unable to resist. "Is it that obvious?" James sighed. "Public opinion is complicated. Maybe because many think your company values profit over people," she suggested, maintaining her professional composure. Instead of the defensive response she expected, James looked at her thoughtfully. "It's far more complicated than that," he said. "This project will create thousands of jobs and revitalize the local economy, but at the expense of displacing established communities and institutions." Olivia countered sharply. "We're working on solutions," James insisted, then smirked with a hint of irony. "Honestly, I don't usually burden my staff with corporate explanations, but talking to you, it's easier than with most here." The unexpected compliment caught Olivia off guard. In class, James was polite but reserved. This relaxed, open, willing to actually talk was new territory for her. "I'm ready to listen," she recovered quickly. "It's part of my job." "And your name is?" he asked. She hesitated. Giving her real name could end the game. "Liv?" she finally said, using the nickname closest friends called her. "Liv Morgan." She borrowed her roommate's last name, feeling a twinge of guilt for the small deception. "Well, Liv Morgan," James said, smiling warmer now. "If the evening turns out as dull as I fear, would it be too bold to continue this conversation later?" Olivia blinked, stunned. James Wilson, the arrogant CEO who had been patronizingly observing her classes for a week, was actually flirting? "I'll be working until the end of the event," she dodged. "Respect for professionalism," he replied. "But if you find a free moment, I'd be glad for the company of someone who speaks frankly." Before she could answer, Catherine Morris appeared beside James in a dazzling dress. "There you are, James," she said. "The mayor just arrived. We need to greet him together." She gave Olivia a brief nod and led James away. As she walked off, Olivia caught Catherine asking, "Who was that?" "Just someone from the staff," James replied, glancing back with that very same smile that made Olivia's cheeks unexpectedly warm. For the rest of the evening, Olivia felt James's presence like an electric current in the room. She watched him move effortlessly among city officials, shake hands, and hold sincere conversations. Their eyes met across the crowd, and he sent her quiet smiles or subtle nods. He was a different person here, confident, commanding in Boston's elite circles, while in class he had seemed awkward, distant. Yet in moments of real importance, talking with the school principal or listening to a community leader, flickers of genuine concern and thoughtfulness crossed his face. Olivia began to wonder, could there be more behind James Wilson's corporate facade? "Your auction tables are doing great," Marco said, appearing beside her. "The vacation package is already up to 8,000. People get generous when they're competing with friends, especially after a few glasses of champagne," Olivia replied, scanning the room. "By the way," Marco added, "the CEO of Artemis Tech has been watching you all evening." "What was that about?" "Just a short conversation," she said, hiding the blush creeping up her neck. "He didn't recognize you from school." Marco laughed, the Clark Kent effect. Amazing what a pair of glasses and a hairstyle change can do. He's my volunteer in class, Olivia explained. I'm supposed to work with him all next month. And you didn't tell him who you are? Marco raised an eyebrow. That's either genius or a disaster. Maybe both, Olivia bit her lip. It started as an impulse. But now I'm curious. How will he act if he doesn't know I'm his rival in class? Playing with fire, Marco warned, though a spark of amusement danced in his eyes. Just don't get burned. The evening was winding down. Olivia gathered the bidding sheets from the quiet auction as guests trickled out. Most had already left, while the few lingering sipped their last drinks lazily. She was surprised to see James approaching, hands in pockets, looking more relaxed than he had all week. Successful event? He asked. Very, she replied, tallying the totals. Your table alone donated $20,000. All for a good cause, James said, though his tone carried a hint of skepticism. Though I wonder how much actually reaches the schools that need it. The remark caught her off guard. That same hint of doubt she'd heard in Sam's voice, now coming from someone like James, was unexpected. Do you doubt the system? She asked. I recently spent time at a public school, he admitted. It was eye-opening. In ways I didn't anticipate. What kind of ways? Olivia asked, intrigued by his opinion of her classroom. James leaned on the auction table, loosening his bow tie. I met a teacher who works miracles despite limited resources. Her students are engaged, they think critically. She doesn't just make them memorize. He shook his head. While events like this raise thousands, I doubt she sees a single penny of it. A complicated feeling stirred in Olivia, surprise that he had noticed, and a quiet acknowledgement that he valued her work despite their differences. This teacher, what do you think of her? She asked cautiously. James considered her question. Honestly, she's stubborn, straightforward, and probably thinks I'm part of corporate America's problem, he said, smiling slightly. But she's devoted, brilliant with her students, and doesn't accept easy answers. It's refreshing when someone challenges you, Olivia asked, taken aback by his candor. In my position, people usually say what I want to hear, James explained. She doesn't care who I am or the worth of my company. It's infuriating, but strangely valuable, he laughed. Olivia didn't know how to respond. The James describing her classroom seemed like a completely different man than the corporate boss she had imagined. Had she misjudged him as badly as he had misjudged her? The project your company is supporting, she shifted slightly. The one in East Boston, what's happening with that school? James's expression darkened. We've proposed moving to a new building 3 miles away, and transportation will be provided for families with difficulties, he explained. At least that's the current plan. But I'm starting to think we need to reconsider some details, thanks to your classroom experience, he added. Studying her face, Olivia narrowed her eyes, and in part, because of conversations like this, James continued. You remind me of her, that teacher. Olivia nearly dropped her tablet. Really? By how unafraid you are to challenge conventional thinking, he said, even though on the surface you couldn't seem more different. Appearances can be deceiving, Olivia said, suppressing a smile as she gathered the final sheets. I should finish up. Of course, James said, straightening. I've distracted you enough. He paused, then added, I'll be volunteering at the school again on Monday. Maybe we'll see each other at an event? Maybe, Olivia replied evasively. After James walked away, Olivia leaned against the table, her heart racing wildly. This version of James Wilson, a thoughtful, reflective man capable of questioning his own beliefs, shattered the neat boxes Olivia had so carefully placed him in as an adversary. But the most unsettling part was the way he looked at her tonight, not with professional detachment, but with genuine curiosity that stirred something unexpected, something forbidden deep inside her. Dangerous territory, Olivia, she whispered to herself. On Monday morning, Olivia arrived in class before anyone else, her hair tightly pulled back in a strict bun, glasses firmly in place. She had spent the weekend grading papers and trying not to dwell on the conversation with James at the gala. Today marked their first mentorship session with the students, and she needed to maintain her professional boundaries. James arrived precisely on time, carrying a tray of coffee and a box of pastries from a local bakery. "Good morning, Miss Chen," he said, setting down the treats. "I brought coffee for you and snacks for the students. Remember you mentioned many of them come straight from part-time jobs. They might be hungry." Olivia froze, unsure how to respond. Such a thoughtful gesture was so unexpected that it left her momentarily speechless. "Thank you," she finally said, taking the cup he handed her. "I do sometimes listen," James replied with a faint, self-deprecating smile. As they discussed the mentorship plans, Olivia found herself studying his face, searching for any hint of memory from that Friday night. But his expression was clear, calm, no trace of the past. To James, Liv Morgan seemed like someone from another world, just like the glittering charity gala, a life far removed from the dimly lit classrooms of Garfield High. "Something wrong?" James asked, noticing her intense stare. "No," Olivia answered quickly. "It's just, you seem different today. Different how?" "More real." She struggled to find the words. James considered this. "Perhaps over the weekend I've had new thoughts about education, community impact, corporate responsibility," he said, shrugging. "It's amazing how talking to the right people can shift your perspective." A pang of guilt stirred in Olivia's chest. These thoughts had come from their conversation, which had begun with deception, even if unintentional. "These students are counting on your support." She carefully steered the conversation back to safe ground. "Many are the first in their families who could attend college, if they can afford it." "I've been thinking about that," James said unexpectedly. "Artemis has a paid internship program. Should I mention it as an option?" "That could be very helpful," Olivia admitted. "But only as one of many opportunities, not a recruitment tactic." "Understood," James nodded. "No corporate propaganda." As Olivia gathered materials for the session, she felt trapped. The more James showed genuine interest in her students, the harder it was to see him as a soulless corporate villain. And her double life only made things more complicated. Sooner or later, he would discover that the gala organizer who had captivated his attention and the steadfast teacher challenging his views were one and the same. And then, she didn't know whether the fragile bridges they were beginning to build would collapse. But for now, she had a classroom and students to teach. All the complications of her unexpected connection with James Wilson lay ahead. Meanwhile, James couldn't focus on the morning meetings. His mind kept drifting back to the upcoming mentorship at Garfield High, and more unsettlingly, to the mysterious woman from the gala. Liv Morgan had been a breath of fresh air amid carefully curated social circles. Her directness reminded him of Olivia Chen, even though the two women could not have been more different. In looks or in temperament, where Olivia embodied practical efficiency and academic focus, Liv radiated quiet elegance and warmth, drawing him in despite himself. "James, are you with us?" Catherine's voice snapped him back to the present. The executive team awaited his answer to a question he hadn't even heard. "Excuse me," he said, straightening in his chair. "Could you repeat that?" Catherine frowned. "We were discussing adjustments to the East Boston project timeline. The public forum is scheduled for next week, and we need to finalize the presentation." "Actually," James said, "I'd like to propose some changes to our plan." The team exchanged surprised glances. "What kind of changes?" Catherine asked cautiously. "I've been thinking about relocating the school," James explained. 3 miles may not sound far, but for families without reliable transportation, it's significant. The move could disrupt the academic year. "We've already accounted for transportation costs in the budget," the CFO pointed out. "It's not just about cost," James said, unexpectedly firm. "It's about community cohesion, uninterrupted education, and showing that we can adapt our plans when legitimate concerns arise." Catherine studied him closely, narrowing her eyes. "This sudden focus on community issues isn't connected to your volunteer work at Garfield School, is it?" "It gave me a new perspective," James admitted. "Perspective is invaluable when decisions affect thousands of lives." "Perspective is important," the CFO agreed, "but so is sticking to deadlines and budgets. Any major changes could delay construction by months. Then we'll adjust the timeline," James said firmly. "It's better to launch a project with community support than push something that breeds long-term resentment." The meeting continued. And this time, James championed the community's interests more strongly than ever. By the end, they agreed to explore possible modifications to the plan, including integrating the existing school building into the new campus. Leaving Garfield School that day, James reflected on what had triggered this shift in his thinking. Was it the time spent in Olivia's class witnessing her dedication to her students, or the conversations with Liv at the charity gala, which challenged his assumptions about the project? Or perhaps a growing awareness that success measured solely by profit and market share felt hollow? Whatever it was, for the first time in a long while, James looked forward to mentorship sessions. He was stepping beyond the familiar world of quarterly reports and shareholder value into something more complex, alive, and real. He didn't yet know that his worlds were already colliding in unexpected ways, and that the woman occupying his thoughts existed in both, watching and waiting for the inevitable moment of reckoning. By the third week of the mentorship program, a surprising routine had emerged. Twice a week, James brought coffee for Olivia and treats for the students. Their meetings evolved from awkward formality into genuine collaboration, James sharing business expertise, Olivia keeping the projects grounded in community needs. But James didn't realize their paths crossed beyond the school. After their first encounter at the charity gala, he saw Liv Morgan again, first at a public forum coordinating logistics, then in a downtown cafe working on event plans. Each encounter tangled James further. He felt drawn to both women, but for entirely different reasons. Olivia, for her sharp mind and dedication to her students. Liv, for her warmth and light conversations that challenged his views without the weight of academic rigor. Tension mounted. Which path would James choose? And were they all ready for what was already looming at the threshold? "You seem distracted today," Olivia noted, scanning student project plans in class. James lifted his eyes from his notes. "Sorry," he admitted. "I keep thinking about the East Boston development." "Because of what you've learned here?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral but curious. "Partly," he admitted, "and partly because of someone I talked to. She sees community impact in a completely different way." Olivia felt a tightening in her chest. "Someone special?" "I don't know yet," James said thoughtfully. "But she's making me look at things differently." The irony wasn't lost on Olivia. James was drawn to her alternative self, simultaneously beginning to respect her real personality, while she struggled to maintain emotional balance between these two worlds. "The board is worried about these changes," Catherine said at their Thursday meeting. "Altering the plan to save the school will add millions to the budget." "It's worth it," James insisted. "We'll build trust, address the community's needs, and create a more integrated campus for everyone." Catherine studied him carefully. "This isn't just a business strategy anymore, is it?" "You're personally invested," James couldn't deny it. His time at Garfield High had shifted from obligation to genuine commitment. He respected Olivia's passionate advocacy and rediscovered something vital in their conversations, a connection to something bigger than profit. "Is that a problem?" he asked. "If it clouds your judgment," Catherine replied, "then yes. The next board meeting is next Thursday. They'll want to see how you defend these changes, not just with idealism." "I'll be ready," James promised. Saturday night at Boston's Education Charity Gala, James spotted Olivia across the room. She wore a simple black dress, her dark hair falling in soft waves. No glasses, no usual bun. She looked completely different, yet something in her still gripped his memory. "We need to stop meeting like this," he said, approaching. "People might start gossiping," Olivia smiled. But her eyes flickered with caution. A corporate director, talking to an employee at a party, sounded scandalous. "I prefer to think the corporate director is seeking wisdom." "From the only honest person in the room," James replied. "I'm already applying some of your ideas on community engagement." "Really?" Olivia asked, a mix of professional pride and personal awkwardness flashing across her face. "We're changing the East Boston project to save the school," he explained. "It will increase costs significantly, but it's the right thing to do." Olivia looked at him, genuinely surprised. "I'm full of surprises," James smiled. "By the way, I have 2 tickets to the symphony next Friday. Would you like to come with me?" The invitation caught Olivia off guard. The final board vote was that Friday, and it also marked the official end of James's mentoring program. "I'd love to," she replied before thinking. "But James, I need to tell you something." Before she could continue, Marco appeared. He needed help with a donor. When she returned, James was already engrossed in a new conversation. She stood aside and realized she had reached her limit. This game had to end. Feelings were becoming real, and the truth needed to come out. Soon. Monday morning, Olivia paced her empty classroom. Today was their last mentoring session before project presentations. After that, James would complete his community service, the board would vote, and their paths would likely diverge, unless she revealed her double life. "Good morning," James said, entering with his usual coffee. "Ready for our final official meeting?" Olivia slowly removed her glasses. "James, I need to tell you something." He frowned, noticing something unusual in her. "What's wrong?" Before she could answer, the classroom door slammed open and Catherine rushed in, tablet in hand. "James, we have a problem," she announced, but froze the moment she saw Olivia. "Oh, I didn't realize you were meeting here. What's going on?" James took the tablet. "Someone leaked our updated plans to the press. The East Boston Community Group claims it's not enough. They're demanding more concessions." James skimmed the article. Anxiety etched across his face. "This complicates the council vote." "We need a statement immediately," Catherine insisted. "I'll come by the office as soon as we finish here," James promised. After Catherine left, he turned to Olivia. "Sorry, what were you going to say?" Olivia hesitated, seeing the tension on his face. This was not the moment for truths that might worsen the situation. "It can wait," she said, slipping her glasses back on. "Let's focus on the student projects." As they prepared for final evaluations, the unspoken truth between them weighed heavier on Olivia. Friday held the perfect opportunity, a symphony performance, to finally reveal everything, far from school pressures and corporate scrutiny. But little did she know, events were already moving in a direction that would force her hand sooner than expected. The week flew by in a whirlwind. James rushed between Artemis headquarters, defending the updated development plan to skeptical board members, and Garfield School, where student projects unfolded with breathtaking results. Yet his thoughts kept returning to Friday, the pivotal vote and his meeting with Leave. Meanwhile, Olivia wrestled with mounting guilt. Several times she nearly revealed her secret to James, only to be interrupted or lose her courage. Thursday arrived, the day of the final presentation, attended by parents, teachers, and even local journalists. "Nervous?" James asked, helping set up the library. "A little," Olivia admitted. "This is huge for the students." "They've worked so hard. You can be proud of them," James said sincerely. "We did this together. You've been an unexpectedly amazing mentor." "That's praise coming from you," she smiled. "Not used to it," he laughed. "But I'll take it." Working side by side, Olivia realized how much had changed in just 4 weeks. The leader she initially thought was detached from reality had become a genuine ally for the students, and her feelings for him went far beyond professional respect, tangled in her double life. "James, after tomorrow's presentation, I need to tell you something," she said suddenly. He looked up, intrigued. "Everything okay?" "It'll be fine," she promised. "When the time is right." The presentation exceeded all expectations. 5 students mentored by James confidently presented their business project, answering questions like seasoned professionals. When they announced that Artemis Tech would provide startup funding, regardless of the council's decision, the room erupted in applause. Later, at the reception, James found himself surrounded by grateful parents and teachers. Olivia watched from a distance, her heart swelling with pride for the students, and something far more complicated every time their eyes met. "A true transformation," Principal Garcia remarked. 4 weeks ago, he could barely hide his unease in the classroom. Now look at him. "People can surprise you." "Indeed," Olivia agreed quietly. "Speaking of surprises," Garcia continued, "I saw you at the charity gala supporting education last weekend. Hardly recognized you without your glasses. You were deeply engaged in conversation with Mr. Wilson, if I'm not mistaken." Something tightened in Olivia's stomach. "You were there?" "My wife dragged me along," she replied. Garcia nodded knowingly. "Don't worry, your secret is safe," she murmured. "I wonder if Mr. Wilson even realizes he's mentoring a friend from the charity gala." Before Olivia could respond, a commotion erupted at the entrance. Catherine Morris appeared. Her face set in a hard expression as her eyes scanned the room for James. "The board wants to see him immediately." Olivia overheard Catherine tell him. Significant changes are happening, she thought. Sensing the tension in the air, James looked at Olivia, torn between his corporate duties and their conversation. "Go," she mouthed, taking the decision for him. "We'll talk tomorrow." With an apologetic nod, James followed Catherine, leaving Olivia with a gnawing sense of unease. James arrived at Artemis headquarters to find the board in an emergency session. Leaked development plans had triggered unexpected backlash, activists loudly opposing the project. "The zoning commission is wavering," the board chair explained. "A decision must be made before tomorrow's vote. Our revised plan addresses the key concerns," James insisted. "We preserve the school, provide transportation solutions, and support local businesses." "That's not enough," another board member countered. "Opposition claims we're manipulating through your mentorship program. They say it's PR, not genuine community work." A flash of anger ignited in James. "This isn't manipulation. I've spent 4 weeks working with these students and teachers. Every change comes from truly understanding their needs." Yet the chair interrupted. "All options must be considered, including reverting to the original plan. It had a clearer path to approval. That would betray everything I promised these kids and their community," James argued. The debate raged late into the night, and James grew increasingly frustrated, the board prioritizing speed over ethics. By the time he left the office, he had barely secured preliminary approval to keep the revised plan, but only if he personally presented it to the zoning commission the next morning. Exhausted, James checked his phone and saw a message from Liv confirming their symphony outing. Despite everything, he smiled. Whatever tomorrow's vote brought, he was looking forward to an evening away from corporate battles with someone who understood both sides of his increasingly complicated life. Friday morning brought a surprising twist. Entering Garfield High, Olivia felt the hallways buzzing with excitement. At the entrance, a local news crew was interviewing students about yesterday's presentation. Miguel, one of James's mentees, ran up to her. "Did you see the news? Mr. Wilson is fighting his own company to save our school." Her heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Miguel showed her his phone, a local news article titled, "Artemis CEO Challenges Board Over East Boston Development Plans." The story detailed James's bold moves to protect Garfield High, despite resistance within his own company, citing anonymous sources from yesterday's board meeting. Before Olivia could fully process it, Principal Garcia appeared. "The media wants your take on the mentorship program," he explained. "As the teacher who worked directly with James Wilson, your insight is invaluable." "I can't," Olivia replied automatically. "I have classes. I arranged a substitute," Garcia insisted. "This is important. The zoning commission votes today, and public opinion could sway the outcome." Reluctantly, Olivia agreed to the interview, carefully answering questions about the mentorship program and its impact on students. But when the discussion turned to James, her voice betrayed her. Emotion slipped through, raw and unguarded. "Mr. Wilson came here out of corporate obligation," she told the reporter, "but he stayed because he truly connected with our students. He listened, he learned, and most importantly, he acted on what he learned. This isn't a PR move, this is genuine growth." Olivia had no idea the interview was live. Meanwhile, James, preparing for a zoning commission presentation, was watching it unfold in real time. He stared at the screen in the conference room, captivated by Olivia's heartfelt defense. There was something in her unguarded eyes, in the way she emphasized her points, that sparked a flash of recognition deep inside him. "We need to go now," Catherine said, gathering her papers. "The commission won't wait." "Just a minute," James replied, eyes fixed on the screen. The interview was winding down, and the reporter asked the final question. "Do you believe Artemis Tech's revised plan deserves approval?" Olivia drew a deep breath. "I believe in corporate responsibility, but I also believe in real change." James Wilson could have treated mentorship as a formality. Instead, he invested himself in understanding our community's needs and advocated for solutions that help everyone. That deserves recognition. The camera lingered on her face. In that moment, something clicked in James's mind. The familiar expressions, the passionate words, the unusual gaze, everything suddenly made sense. He could no longer deny it. "It's her," he whispered. "Who?" Catherine asked impatiently, glancing at her watch. "Olivia Chen." "She's Liv Morgan," James said, the truth settling in. "They're the same person," Catherine frowned. "James, we don't have time for guesses." "The commission is waiting." But James was already reaching for his phone, thoughts spinning like a storm. The woman challenging him in the classroom, and the one captivating him at the gala. She was the same. Every word, every interaction suddenly carried a new weight. "I need to see her," he said sharply, standing. "After the commission," Catherine insisted. "This vote will decide the fate of the project. And maybe your future as CEO." The gravity of responsibility pulled James back. He was bound by promises to the company, to the students, to himself. Personal revelations would have to wait. "You're right," he admitted. "Let's go." On the way to the meeting, James quickly drafted a message. "I need to see you." After the vote, "There's something important to discuss." He sent it to both Olivia's mentorship number and Liv's personal number. The same message to two women, a proof of his realization. Now he had to secure Garfield School's future first, then face the one who had unintentionally turned everything he cared about upside down. Olivia, staring at her phone, froze. The identical messages confirmed her worst fear. James had discovered her double life. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed a response. "My classroom. 12 p.m. The rest of the school day passed in a haze. Students noticed her distraction, attributing it to anticipation over the commission's decision. By 3:30 p.m., rumors spread across the city. The announcement was expected within the hour. When the final bell rang, Olivia stayed at her desk, attempting to grade papers, though her mind kept drifting. What would James say? Would he accuse her, be confused, or feel hurt? All three seemed possible, and she couldn't blame him. At exactly 4 p.m., there was a knock at the door. She looked up. James stood there, his expression unreadable. "May I come in?" he asked formally. Olivia nodded, symbolically removing her glasses. "I think we need to talk." James entered, closing the door behind him. For several long moments, he just looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "How much do you know?" Olivia broke the silence. "Since this morning," James replied. "Your interview aired on TV. There was something in your words, something that caught me." Suddenly, everything fell into place, and Olivia winced. "I never wanted it to go this far." "That first night at the gala, when you didn't recognize me," James began. "That was an accident," she interrupted. "And then there were the cafe meetings, the symphony invitation." James's voice sharpened. "All of that was part of some calculated game?" "No," Olivia said firmly, rising to meet his gaze. "It all started by chance. Then I didn't know how to tell you without making things even more awkward." "And then?" James asked. "I started enjoying our conversations," she admitted. "Both as Olivia and as Liv. You were different with each, and I wanted to understand why." James ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "So you staged a social experiment, testing how a corporate CEO reacts to a teacher versus an attractive event organizer." Olivia flinched at his words. "That's unfair, isn't it?" "No, you're not wrong," James countered. "You had all the information. I acted in the dark." "You're right," Olivia whispered. "I should have told you as soon as I realized you didn't recognize me." "I'm sorry." James paced the classroom, trying to untangle his emotions. Anger over the deception mixed with an undeniable connection he felt to both sides of this woman. "Before I decide what I think about all this," he finally said, "I need to know one thing. Was any of it real? Our conversations, our ideas, were they genuine or just an attempt to influence the project?" The question struck a nerve. James could have reduced everything between them to corporate politics. "It was real," Olivia said firmly. "Yes, I truly care about this school and these kids." "And what about what was between us? The talks, the connection that had nothing to do with Artemis Tech or the development plans?" He held her gaze. If it weren't real, I wouldn't have agreed to go to the symphony, she admitted. James studied her face closely and saw not deception, but vulnerability. To be honest, he said after a moment, the zoning commission approved the revised plan. Garfield will stay put with modernization funding from Artemis as part of the agreement. Relief washed over Olivia. Thank you for fighting for this. I know dealing with the board wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, James agreed. But it was the right decision. He paused, then added, though I'm not sure how to feel about the fact that the same person who challenged me in class also supported me outside of it. I meant every word in both roles, Olivia insisted. The setting might have been different, but the person was the same. James thought for a moment. You know what's funny? As Olivia, you made me question the company's approach to community impact. As Liv, you reminded me why I started Artemis in the first place, to create something meaningful. Not just profitable. The confession hung between them like a fragile bridge over a chasm of misunderstanding. What now? Olivia asked softly. James glanced at the clock. Tonight we have tickets to the symphony. I bought them for Liv Morgan, but I'll gladly go with Olivia Chen. Hope fluttered in Olivia's chest. You still want to go despite everything? I'm still processing the deception, James admitted honestly. But I've spent the last month getting to know both versions of you. I'm drawn to both. I think it's worth continuing. A smile played on Olivia's lips. Looks like I'll have to let my hair down for the symphony. Maybe I should loosen my tie, James replied with a cautious smile. 7 o'clock? Olivia confirmed. He turned to leave but stopped at the door. And one more thing. Which do you prefer, Olivia or Liv? The question caught her off guard, but her answer came without hesitation. Neither, and both. They're different sides of the same me. She tilted her head thoughtfully. The real question is, which version of yourself do you like more? James paused, considering. Seems I'm still figuring that out. Maybe we can help each other? With that, he left, leaving Olivia alone in the empty classroom, carrying a mix of relief, anticipation, and cautious optimism. The careful boundaries between her worlds had begun to crumble. Yet perhaps from the ruins something genuine could emerge. That evening, as she prepared for the symphony, Olivia deliberately blended elements of both her personas, letting her hair down but keeping her glasses, choosing a dress that balanced elegance and practicality. In the mirror, she didn't see the strict teacher or the flawless organizer. She saw something whole, something real. James arrived precisely on time, subtly changed as well. His suit was immaculate, yet no tie. The rigid corporate mask softened. You look wonderful, he said, scanning her. Real? Thank you, she replied. That was the goal. The symphony performance became the perfect neutral ground for their renewed connection. They sat side by side in the hall, sharing a moment untouched by school politics or corporate ambitions. Just two people, immersed in Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. During the intermission, they stepped out onto a terrace overlooking nighttime Boston. I'll admit, James began, gazing at the city lights. Even before I realized you were Liv, I started looking forward to our classroom sessions, even while arguing against everything you said. Why? Olivia asked, surprised. Because you challenged everything, he corrected. Do you know how rare that is in my world? People either want something or are too afraid to disagree. Well, you had no trouble with that, she laughed. No, James agreed. And it was refreshing. Sometimes hard, but necessary. Olivia leaned on the terrace railing. You surprised me too. I expected a corporate robot brushing off mentorship like a checkbox. But you really listened to the students. You considered their ideas. These kids are remarkable, James said. They deserve a chance to succeed. By the way, Olivia asked cautiously, what happens to the mentorship program now that your official commitments are over? James turned to face her. I've thought about that. How about making it permanent? Not just at Garfield, but across all Boston schools. Artemis executives could mentor students, opening paths to internships and careers. Olivia's eyes widened. You're serious? Absolutely, James nodded. 4 weeks at Garfield proved what's possible, when business and education truly work together. I want to expand it. That would be incredible, Olivia said sincerely. but it would require ongoing support from Artemis. Then we start with the CEO, James agreed, who seems to care about education, and maybe one English teacher in particular. His words hung between them, a quiet acknowledgement of feelings not yet fully spoken. James, Olivia began cautiously, we probably need to talk about what comes next. For us, before he could answer, the bell rang, signaling the end of intermission. To be continued, James smiled, offering his hand. We've got a whole night ahead to figure it out. Returning to their seats, Olivia realized they had begun something complex, but full of promise. The masks had fallen, revealing two people with different perspectives but shared values, bound by an undeniable connection that went far beyond their initial assumptions of each other. The final movement of the symphony swirled around them, its message of joy and unity resonating with Olivia's cautious optimism. Whatever lay ahead, they were ready to face it honestly, without pretense, without masks. Perhaps it was the most promising beginning of all. 3 months after that symphonic night, Olivia stood in her classroom, watching her students present projects to a panel of Artemis Tech executives. What began as James's personal mentorship had grown into a company-wide initiative. 20 Artemis employees now regularly volunteered in schools across Boston. Garfield High itself had transformed remarkably. Construction on a modern annex to the historic building had begun, fully funded by Artemis, under a renewed development agreement. The computer lab boasted state-of-the-art equipment. Thousands of new books filled the library, and the college prep program opened. Doors for Olivia's students they hadn't even dreamed of. Before, Miss Chen called Miguel, now an Artemis intern despite still being in his senior year. They loved my proposal. Mr. Wilson said it could be implemented company-wide. Olivia smiled warmly. I'm not surprised. You did incredible work. When the presentations ended, James approached, more relaxed than she had ever seen him during the early days of mentorship. His corporate armor had slowly faded, replaced by a composed confidence that inspired respect without creating distance. Your students continue to impress, he said. Pride in his voice. Our students, she gently corrected. You've earned the right to share in their success. It wasn't just the school that had changed. Over these months, their relationship had grown. Through honest conversations, debates, and mutual respect. They moved carefully, aware of how delicate the dynamic could be. Teacher and CEO, the woman whose school he nearly displaced. But each step strengthened their partnership. Ready for tonight? James asked, glancing at his watch. The mayor's education committee meets at 6. Almost, Olivia nodded. Just need to review these last projects. Their professional collaboration grew alongside their personal connection. James appointed Olivia to the mayor's committee on educational innovation, where her hands-on experience complemented his strategic perspective. Together, they were helping Boston rethink how students prepared for an increasingly complex future. I'll pick you up at 5:30, James said, leaning over to kiss her cheek, a professional courtesy they maintained within school walls. After he left, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From adversaries to reluctant allies, from uncertain roles to true partnership. Every step required letting go of old assumptions and opening their hearts. Her phone buzzed. Marco's message. Can't believe your Clark Kent trick turned you into Boston's top educational reform duo. You're everywhere. Olivia smiled at the exaggeration. They weren't a perfect pair, but they had found a way to combine forces for real change. James brought corporate resources and strategy. She brought pedagogical expertise and community connection. Together, they had become more than the sum of their parts. That evening, on the way to City Hall, James reached across the console and took her hand. I can't believe it's almost been a year since the mentorship began, he said. We need to do something special. Like what? Olivia asked. A celebration at the school, he said. That too, she nodded. But I was thinking of something more personal. Olivia raised an eyebrow. For example? A weekend in New York, James suggested. Metropolitan Opera is performing La Bohème. I know you've always dreamed of seeing it. That sounds amazing. Olivia smiled, touched by his attention. There's more, James continued, a hint of nervousness in his voice. I've been offered a seat on the National Business Council for Educational Innovation. It means regular trips to Washington. James, that's incredible. Olivia said sincerely. You deserve that recognition. But there's another part, he added quietly. They want a classroom teacher on the council, someone with real experience bridging business and education. Olivia's eyes widened. You mean, they're talking about my work at Garfield? Yes, James confirmed. Meetings would only be quarterly, so you wouldn't have to give up teaching. But it gives you a platform to influence national policy. I don't know what to say. Olivia breathed, overwhelmed with excitement. Just think about it, James said. You've shown me how powerful education can be when approached with passion and purpose. Others deserve that experience too. As they approached City Hall, Olivia felt a deep sense of gratitude. What began as a corporate PR event and a chance mistake of identity had become a catalyst for change. For her students, Garfield School, Boston's educational system, and for both of them. By the way, James said as they walked toward the meeting, Catherine mentioned yesterday she never imagined it would turn out this way when she first assigned me to the mentorship program. What did you tell her? Olivia asked. That sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the most unexpected teachers, he smiled, squeezing her hand, and that I was lucky to be one of her students. 6 months later, Olivia stood at the podium in Garfield's renovated auditorium, addressing the inaugural class of the Artemis Educational Opportunities Program. 50 students from across Boston had been selected for intensive mentorship, internships, and university preparation. Today marks the beginning of a journey, she said, her voice filled with genuine excitement. A journey that started right here, when a teacher and a businessman put aside their differences to focus on what truly matters, creating opportunities for students like you. In the front row, James watched with pride. Her passionate advocacy for education rang stronger than ever. The program they had built together was already being replicated in other cities, corporations and schools finding common ground to nurture the talents of the future. After the ceremony, walking through Garfield's halls, James stopped at room 207, the very room where they first met, still holding the same book open on the desk. Remember how we couldn't stand each other on the first day? He smiled. Yes, Olivia laughed. Corporate power player and stubborn academic, mutual disdain was obvious from the start. And now look at us, James said, gently pulling her into an embrace. Co-leaders of a national educational initiative, partners in Boston's most successful school business coalition, and... Olivia gave a small nod, silently urging him to continue. James pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, an invitation to something far more permanent. Olivia's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a delicate ring, elegant, understated. Just like their relationship, Olivia Chen, James whispered. You've taught me more than I could have imagined, about education, about community, and about what truly matters in life and in business. You challenged my perspective, made me confront my own privilege, and still found in me something worth loving. James, Olivia whispered, unable to speak through the whirlwind of emotions. I don't care, he smiled, his eyes soft. Whether your hair is up or down, glasses on or off, I love every part of you, and I want to spend my life discovering everything else about you. Will you marry me? Olivia's gaze shifted from the ring to the man holding it, the corporate executive turned education advocate, the reluctant volunteer turned indispensable partner in her life and work. Yes, she said simply, wrapping her arms around his neck. Absolutely yes. As their lips sealed the promise, the final school bell rang, and the corridors filled with students rushing out. Reactions ranged from embarrassed giggles to joyful cheers as they realized what was happening. Congratulations, Ms. Chen, came a familiar voice. Miguel approached with a wide grin. So Mr. Wilson is going to be around even more now? Afraid so, James laughed, holding Olivia close at the waist. You're stuck with both of us. Perfect, Miguel nodded approvingly. You two make a great team. Watching Miguel join his friends, Olivia leaned into James, reflecting on the unexpected journey that had brought them here. From misunderstandings to genuine connection, from corporate obligations to heartfelt emotions, They had built something no one could have imagined on that first tense day in room 207. "Good team," James murmured thoughtfully. "I agree," Olivia confirmed, sliding the ring onto her finger. Partners in every sense. Around them, Garfield High buzzed with life. Students participating in Artemis-led programs, teachers implementing innovative lesson plans they had designed together. The future unfolded in brighter colors than anyone could have imagined just a year ago. At the center stood two people who had learned the most valuable lesson. Sometimes, looking past first impressions and surface, differences reveals connections that can change not only lives but entire communities. It began with a CEO who thought she was just a teacher, until she allowed herself to be herself. It grew into something far greater, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and love that transcends titles, appearances, in stereotypes. Hand in hand, walking through the school that had brought them together, Olivia and James stepped confidently into a shared future, where education and business, heart and mind, practice and idealism no longer opposed each other, but worked in harmony toward goals neither could achieve alone. And perhaps that was the most important lesson of all. What do you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments, rate it from 0 to 10, and let us know your favorite part. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss new stories and can enjoy every moment.